We're starting our best of the last 16 All-Ireland football final winners, and joining me today is Cahair O'Kane of the Irish News. Cahair, the first thing to point out is that big lovely teddy bear beside you. Where did you get that?
That was the wee brother bought that for his goddaughter when one of our girls was born, and it was up in the kitchen earlier, and everybody was going mad, and one of the girls had to sleep, so it had to come down to the room with me. So
Word is that you don't feel safe without it.
that sleeps in beside me at night.
Okay, let's just go through the theory. We've started this in the hurling already, and for anyone who hasn't seen it in the football, basically the idea is that we look at the last 16 All-Ireland winners, draw them into lots, and see how we get on in terms of seeing who wins the knockout competition, voted for by the viewers. So today we're going to be talking about Tyrone against Dublin. So Tyrone 2005, Dublin 2018. The next one will be Cork 2010 against Dublin 2017, Kerry 04 against Kerry 14, Dublin 2013, Donegal 2012, so on and so forth. I think everyone gets it. The thing is, there's plenty of Dublin in there, so hopefully it isn't like. Do you remember when England were? They had this new boat that they wanted to get named by the public, and everyone kind of voted for it to be called Boaty McBoatface. So hopefully it isn't one of these rigged votes where it's basically all the last 8 teams are dubs or the semi-finals are dubs, because that would be no fun at all. We want to get a bit of a mix going here. We'll jump straight into it, Cahair, because Dublin have been so dominant for so long, and this was 2018 was year 4 of the 5 in a row. And because they were so excellent for so long, it's kind of hard to distinguish one year from the next. So I don't know, what are even the defining factors of this Dublin team in 2018?
Well, in terms of 2018, I've always argued that their peak years were 2015 and 2016, and that there was an evolution beyond that, and they changed the way they played. But I don't think they've ever hit those. I felt they were just unstoppable for those couple of years. Like nobody would have beaten them, and 2018, obviously the team had changed again a wee tiny bit, but you have to look. Defensively that year as well, Fally McMahon and Cian O'Sullivan both had kind of average enough years. And an A point is that, they had such strength that they still won in All Ireland in spite of that. That is how deep their resources were. But the other side is that they were probably just a wee bit off where they had been a couple of years ago. The fact that these two, they were still in the team, they were still playing, but they weren't firing the same way. They had become a more methodical team in terms of the way they played, in terms of the way they attacked as well.
Is it also a case that this Dublin team had a fairly simple road for a lot of the way to the All-Ireland final, and that's something to take into account when you talk about how good an All-Ireland winner is. But they beat Wicklow, obviously not in their league, Longford the same, Laois. Then in the Super 8s, their group was Donegal, Tyrone and Roscommon. Then they beat Galway, which a team that hadn't really done a whole pile in the semi-final, and then Tyrone in the final, and bullying teams most of the way along the way. That Tyrone 05 team wouldn't exactly get bullied, would it?
No, and we always have this thing maybe in Ulster where we feel that any All-Ireland won by an Ulster team is harder earned than by anybody else because of how hard it is to get through the Ulster Championship. And then I think I remember looking at a stat a couple of years ago where there were maybe 4 or 5 teams in the first 15 years of the qualifiers that came from round 1 of the qualifiers and reached an All-Ireland semi-final. So somebody got a tough draw on Ulster in the first round, and it was very, very hard. And obviously that Tyrone team in 2005 was a team that did that. They came through the back door, and that is a very, very tough long road for any team. I think they were the team that played 10 games and won the All-Ireland that year, and it was just remarkable in a sense. But they had the quality was just hanging out of that Tyrone team. They just were, especially up front. Just as a Derryman, it breaks my heart. The idea that was such a deadly Tyrone forward line, but they were, just go through them. Like, look at their front six: Duher, McGuigan, Ryan Mellon, Peter Canavan, Stephen O'Neill, Owen Mulligan in the All-Ireland final. That would have tested any of the Dublin teams. That would have really, really tested any of the Dublin teams of their peak. And that's, the we can't bring these teams back, and you just loved to have seen how that Tyrone team would have done against even the Dublin teams that I talked about at their peak a couple
Well,
of years ago.
Well, let's have a little look at that Dublin team here. I'll bring it up on screen. And Stephen Cluxton in goals, of course, there for so long. Philly McMahon, Keane O'Sullivan, Owen Merchant been one of the newer guys. Now, John Small had been around for a couple of years, as had Johnny Cooper. Jack McCaffrey ended up being man of the match. Brian Fenton, this is midway through his run of being the elite midfielder around. James McCarthy, just enduring class. Niall Scully had come through in the previous year or so, as had Con O'Callaghan, well, maybe going back to 2016. Brian Howard had established himself. Paul Mannion ends up with a goal in the game, nominated for man of the match, as one was Kilkenny with 4 points. Dean Rock in there as well. Do you think there's a lot that... Is there much in there that Tyrone 05 team wouldn't have been able to handle? Actually, and before I ask you that, we will come back to that. But Tyrone were beaten by 6 points in this final in 2018. How much do you think that Tyrone 05 team would have beaten the Tyrone 2018 team by?
How much would they beaten them by? I was at a talking night here a couple of weeks ago, and Peter Canavan was on the panel, and they were asked to choose their best 15 of Ulster at the present, and there were 4 panelists, and they all argued over the best 15, but they had to pick their own team to start and that would play the Dubs and beat them. And Peter Canavan hadn't got a single Tyrone player on his team of the current team, which was, there's definitely a couple of arguments, and obviously, like, I think, to be fair, the fact that Cathal McShane was either, I think he'd maybe just got injured at that stage, or was still talking about Australia. He wasn't really in the picture, and Peter Hart was away on honeymoon. Matty Donnelly's out injured long term, so maybe that affected Canavan's thinking because it was a recent, But you're literally talking a couple of players. How many of that Tyrone team from 2005 would be dislodged by any of the current team? Like Niall Morgan would have a good shot, maybe. Like a fully fit Paddy Hampsey, maybe. But I think you're looking at Matty Donnelly, Cathal McShane, and it's where you even think Peter Hart goes. Maybe he goes at wing back in place of Davy Hart, his cousin. But even he wouldn't be a guarantee on that. So the Tyrone team of 2005 was vastly superior, in my mind, to the current team. I think there's no doubt about that.
So the way that this Tyrone team was started off really well in this 2018 final, but you got the sense that after 25 minutes that it was more or less game over. And that's not something that you would associate with that 2005 team. Maybe it's unfair comparing the generations, but I suppose that's the whole point of this exercise. I just couldn't possibly see that 05 team I don't know, just getting the life squeezed out of them the way they did. So, I mean, I don't know if that necessarily kind of contributes too much to the 2005 team beating the 2018 team. But do you think there's anyone on that 2018 Dublin team that the 05 Tyrone lads wouldn't have been able to handle?
Well, just on your, it goes back. You're talking about the Dublin team of 2018 would never have done that to the 2005 team, but that was the quality of Tyrone's attack in 2005. They would, they would have scored. Tyrone, the current team, are trying to manufacture scores, whereas the 2005 team had scores in them all over the place. And so look, the Dublin team, any defence would struggle with Paul Mannion and Kieran Kilkenny, and the way that Dean Rock times that run on the lip and just he just kicks it as soon as the ball's in his hands, and it's it's very hard to defend against, and they're so methodical. But Tyrone would have fancied themselves. And then there's the other side. Would the Tyrone team of 2018, and what I just mentioned about Phil McMahon and Keane O'Sullivan maybe not having a great year, would they have coped at all with Tyrone's forward line from 2005? And I don't I don't know that they would have any better than it's a very close contest, but they certainly wouldn't have done any better than vice versa.
Who would you put on Con O'Callaghan? Who would you put on the likes of Kieran Kilkenny?
On Kilkenny, see, because Tyrone were so used to playing with Conor Gormley, because it was the era where the sweeper started, and they probably got doing it for a lot of the time, and Conor Gormley was just so good at it that he would play that role. You're looking at probably, you've kind of threw that on me, but I'm looking at it. McMenamin, I'd imagine, would go on Paul Mannion. Joe McMahon, see, there's a chance. Again, we're going around in circles because there's a chance you alter your team. Do you know what I mean? If you're talking about matchups, there's a chance you alter your team, and that Joe McMahon maybe doesn't play at fullback because Dublin, Joe McMahon and Justin McMahon in 08 were the perfect combination fullback for what Kerry had, but mightn't be the perfect combination for what Dublin. If you're really pushing it, Joe McMahon probably goes on Dean Rock. Mickey McGee probably goes then on Conor Callaghan, and you're looking at Davy Hart probably on Niall Scully, and then there's the mismatch possibly of Philly Jordan was the outstanding wing back in Ireland for a period around that time, and in the offensive sense, would be absolutely deadly. But there's a chance of a physical mismatch against Brian Howard, and you'd have to move the pieces around. But I think Tyrone would have found a way.
Do you know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see Stephen O'Neill against maybe. I was just flicking through the team there. Would Stephen O'Neill have come up against maybe Philly McMahon? Would Johnny Cooper have gone on maybe Owen Mulligan? Like, there's some very, very tasty matchups there.
Yeah, you're looking at that, but then by the same token, who picks Canavan? You're probably, because of the role Cian O'Sullivan was playing at that time. You're into. Again, realistically, you probably maybe start Mick Fitzsimmons in that team, as opposed to maybe Owen Merchant doesn't get in that team because they need more man markers, and so you're altering. Fitzsimmons was obviously established by that stage and just didn't play that day in 2018. But you're looking at, like, Fitzsimmons is probably the man that in my head would pick Canavan.
If he could be marked. What would be another brilliant one?
Aye.
Brian Dooher against Jack McCaffrey.
Jesus. Just two roadrunners. Up and down and up and down and up and down. Like, that'd be a wee match of its own. Like, but look, probably a smart manager would keep them away from each other because they would just cancel each other out. And Tyrone probably couldn't afford to have Dooher shut out of a game as much as Dublin could afford to have. Dublin have so many utensils and so many ways of operating now that Dooher was, like, for all the class and the style that was about that Tyrone team, like, Dooher was arguably its most important component, and the role that he played and the way that he did it, and talking about 2008, like, and that score against Kerry, in a weaker Tyrone team, he just. This was a huge factor in what Tyrone did.
A couple of things I want to ask you about. Number one is the depth of the panels, because the 2018 final, you have both teams using 6 subs, which is obviously you're allowed more subs these days, but that's a marked difference. The other thing, who has the better free taker?
Well,
I've sprung it on you again.
Canavan didn't miss many. Mulligan didn't miss many. Steve O'Neill didn't miss many. They were all very good free takers in their own right. Now, like, statistically, are there any free takers in history that compare to Dean Rock? Maybe it's the era of stats too. Maybe we just don't know that they compared. We know now how good Dean Rock is, and we know his numbers, but we maybe just didn't know Canavan's percentages and O'Neill's percentages. But in your mind, just Dean Rock just doesn't miss, and it's hard to think of a more accurate free taker. But look, if you give Tyrone 10 scoreable frees, they'd probably kick 9 of them. If you give Rock 10 scoreable frees, you'd probably kick 10 of them. So it's maybe not a huge factor in the game, but there's no looking past Rock in that argument.
So then, just in conclusion, I'm going to say Stephen Cluxton is the better goalkeeper. I'm going to say Dean Rock is the slightly better free taker and both of those are crucial aspects. Your restarts. I actually, just before I fully settle on Dublin, and Dublin is where I'm going to go with this. I think this is the game with probably the biggest generation gap in the best of all Irelands of the last 16, 05 to 18. The game. Do you feel that the game is unrecognisable between those two games?
It probably is. I think, even though Tyrone constantly get criticised for bringing this upon football, bringing defensiveness upon football before Donegal did, it's a very, very unfair, what would you say, a very, very unfair legacy on that team. Everybody, that famous harrying scene in the All Ireland semi final against Kerry, the first one, like, and the turnovers. It was in Kerry's half of the field.
And it was brilliant to watch.
What Tyrone brought was just absolute, just mad intensity and chasing the ball, and and doing things the way other teams hadn't done them. But all right, they played with a sweeper, but it wasn't anywhere near what Donegal then brought it in 2011. So it's very, very unfair that this Tyrone team gets labelled as in any way a defensive outfit, because look at that forward line. And they could deliver the ball anyway to that. Look at again. I'm moving away from that 2005. Was it 2005? The goal that Canavan scored. I think it was 2005. Where the long ball, and Mulligan catches it and he waits and he waits and he pops it off, and Canavan's finished just off the instep. Like, it's just, you could have given that forward line any kind of ball and they made something of it. And like, I don't think that the Dublin defence of 2018, the way that they played that year, because 2018, like, Kerry get criticised for winning soft All Irelands. Dublin didn't have to do all that awful much to win the All Ireland in 2018 in times, and their defence wasn't at the level that it had been, and for that reason, I would argue that Tyrone would beat them, because Tyrone's forward line would have, different gravy.
It'd be such a brilliant matchup. So we'll put it out to the public there. We'll put a vote up on Twitter. We'll also put a comment after the video on YouTube. So click like on the comment for Tyrone 2005, or click like on the video or on the comment for Dublin 2018. Cahair O'Kane, thank you very much.
Thanks, Shane.